Hello, loved ones. So the lovely Kitty told me, "Why are you using that as your little background the way I was doing videos?" She's like, "Well, all you got to do is really turn 90 degrees. Literally, it's what I was facing there, and that was the background." She's like, "Turn this way, and you got a much better background." I'm like, well, you're right as usual. So here we are, much better background. Anyway, so I like to talk a lot about reality creation and how we can use that to make better lives for ourselves. I mean, why wouldn't you, right? And a lot of proof behind that is like, for example, with the double slit experiment. The double slit experiment showed us that the particles during most people know what it is, but the particles that were fired between the two slits or at the two slits, the expectation was that it was going to form just two lines on the wall, that the particle would go either through this one or that one. Simple enough. So they turned the thing on, they went to lunch or whatever, and they came back, and it had formed a wave pattern, much like if you were to take two pebbles and drop them in some water, and then the ripples would then play off of each other and form waves. So then they observed it. They set up some kind of observation. And that's when it did form the two lines as expected. And so that didn't make a whole lot of sense. And it doesn't make sense. And I'm sorry, but there is no explanation for it. And then another example I want to use is like space exploration. When we are developing more powerful and more and telescopes and can look further into space. And we don't know what's out there. We don't. We can speculate and all that and guess, and we probably can expect to see a few things. And guess what? The further we're able to look into space, we see what? More space. But also, we see more galaxies and nebula and whatever else. But the point is, we see the things that we expect to see. Now, I understand there are some anomalies here and there. They might find something, they make some new discovery, something that they did not expect. We can probably attribute that to the creator, okay? But I'm not going to get too off into the weeds on that kind of thing, because my point is that we experience what we expect to experience. And in most people's case, they experience what they are taught to experience or what they have been conditioned to experience. That's why you see people following the same patterns as their parents, and it goes all the way down the line. And occasionally you will find someone who breaks away, and maybe they have a family history of just being working class and struggling their whole lives and whatever. And then maybe somebody comes along and makes something of themselves or whatever, however you want to word this. And if you really kind of looked into it, you've kind of figure out that they changed what they were looking for. They expected something else. And that's something that we can consciously do. But we have to remember that 95% of our conscious, unconscious ratio, I guess, 95% is subconscious of our minds. So really, we only operate with about 5%. But the good thing is with that 5%, we can condition our subconscious to expect to see other things. It really depends upon what we focus our attention on, because where attention goes, energy flows. Double slit experiment. Because when we focus our attention on that, those wave patterns of probabilities, because in that the particle is not really anything. It's a wave pattern. It could be that. It could be this. It could be that. It's just a possibility. A wave pattern. But as soon as we focus our attention on that, that's when it collapses to a this or a that. Same thing goes for creating our own reality. When we focus our attention on the possibility, then that's what it becomes. So, but we can focus our attention on this or that. So why not focus our attention on the things that we do want and stop worrying about the things that we've been conditioned or programmed to think is the case? But with and I often talk, I poo-poo the collective a lot. But I guess it's more because I am such a fan of individuality and how we, sovereign souls, can go our own way and focus on something different. Because people in general, as a whole, as a group, as a collective, have, I don't want to say decided, but they are focused on something, right? And it tends to kind of break towards the negative. I don't mean they're in a negative, they're necessarily negative, but if you don't consciously focus on positive, what you want, then it's typically going to break towards the negative. There is a theory behind it. Jason Breshears of the Archaics channel, he calls it negative default programming. And I think he's pretty much spot on with that. I think that if just kind of left alone, we do kind of break towards the negative. We can go towards positive, but it takes some effort. It takes some focus. It takes us directing our attention towards that. And I guess because of that, we have to break from the collective and go our own way. Because if we stay with them, we're going to stay in that negative default programming, as Jason of Archaics likes to put it. And I think he's very right. Otherwise, I wouldn't have mentioned it here. Anyway, so what space exploration, what we expect to see and all those kinds of things, also the double slit experiment, it does prove that we can create our reality just based on what we focus on. Because double slit shows us nothing is really real. Nothing is really there. It's just an oscillating field of energy, of possibility, until we focus on it. So choose to focus on what you do want instead of what you don't want. Choose to begin moving in the direction of what you do want, not what you don't want. Because we got to remember that this field, the universe, whatever you want to call it, is pretty much negative. I'm sorry, the trajectory is negative. It's pretty much neutral. It's a neutral field, and it will give you this or it'll give you that. Why? Because it's all the same to it. To it, it's all just a part of the thing. But to you, as an individual, you can choose, well, that's all fine and good, but I'm going to go with this. This is what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to focus on what I want to focus on. And the neutral field will reflect that right back to you. Why? Because it doesn't care. It'll reflect back to you whatever you decide to project into it. Whatever you focus on and project to it, this is what I'm doing. That's what you'll get. And that's great news for those of us who know these things and want to put forth the effort. Because we do live in a physical realm. We're spiritual beings, yes. And they're non-physical, yes. That's what we are. But in this lifetime, in these physical bodies, these avatars, we do have to remember this is physical. So we have to do physical things. The point I'm getting at with that is, yes, positive thinking and affirmations and all of those things are great. They really are. But it's not enough. In the spiritual realm, it probably is enough. But when we're here in the physical, we have to make physical steps. We have to physically begin moving in that direction. Because time is movement. Movement is pretty much what makes this thing physical. So, decide what it is that you want to focus your attention towards, what you want to make your reality. And yes, have the positive thoughts, of course, and the affirmations, and do all of those things. But you have to physically begin moving in that direction. You can't have a successful online business if you don't start an online business, right? You have to physically do those things. And I mean, I believe in a higher power, of course, and you will get help from your higher power. But you got to put some skin in the game. Get busy. And don't worry about how it's going to shake out. It doesn't matter if it doesn't, it's like, there's no way this is going to work out. It doesn't matter. You just begin moving in that direction. And yes, stay positive, of course. Anyway, loved ones, that's what I got. And yeah, I love you. And I will be back directly.